United States welcomed some refugees from South Africa. Interestingly enough, the people who are saying we need refugees in the country aren't super thrilled about it. Also, drama inside the DNC. I know we all hate to see that, but there's lots of infighting, and honestly, it's quite hilarious. And a co-host from The View is changing her tune on the Pope after she makes a pretty dumb discovery. Not that it should matter at all. All that and more coming up on this episode of Turning Point Tonight. My name is Joe Bob. Thanks so much for tuning in. Together, we are charting the course of America's cultural comeback. This is Turning Point Tonight. Now, before we get to any of those stories and our fantastic panel, I want to get to a piece in the New York Times over the weekend. Now, the New York Times used to be a newspaper and now is just an opinion section masquerading as news. And in this piece, they talked about the bleak outlook of California. Why aren't people optimistic anymore of the nation's most populous state? Now, they did touch on all of the issues that are embroiling California. They touched on homelessness, the fires, the water resources, the rampant illegal immigration, the healthcare system, the high cost of living, and they laid that all at the feet of President Trump, which I thought was hilarious. It almost seems like it's too crazy to be true, but every single time they said, well, there are water resource problems that the Californians are facing, and then there's difficulty working on that problem with Washington. The homelessness epidemic has overtaken California because of the policies, and the problem that California has is being able to work with Washington. All the way up to the fires that plagued California, which again were a tragedy and disaster, and nobody wants to see that happen. Well, the real problem is the contentious relationship that California has with Washington, D.C. I kid you not, the entire thing again and again and again and again effectively blamed Donald Trump, a guy who's never lived in California, let alone held public office in California, for all of California's shortcomings. Now, to be fair, they did say that the president has been, well, let's say apprehensive to help California out, but I also understand that. The big comparison that they made was, well, President Clinton, in his term as a Democrat, didn't want to help the then Republican governor of California, did help the Republican governor of California after the earthquakes that caused $40 billion in damage. Well, the caveat there would be, okay, well, Clinton wanted to win California in the 96 election, so he had a vested interest in helping them. And again, that's not to say that President Trump doesn't want to help Californians, but put it this way. If somebody is getting punched in the face, of course, you want to help them out. But if somebody is repeatedly punching themselves in the face, well, maybe you hold off assistance until they stop, which is exactly what President Trump has effectively said. Hey, California, we'd love to help you out, but you got to make some changes to how you're running things, or else we think maybe our help will have been wasted on a state that will not correct any of its policies. Here to comment on that and so much more is our fantastic panel. Bo Alford is a Turning Point content creator. It's a mouthful. And Harrison Weinhold works at the Blaze TV. Guys, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate you taking the time.
Of course, excited to be here.
Bo, I want to start with you here. California, again, pretty big deficits when it comes to pretty much everything, culturally, economically. I hate to ask this and sound serious, but considering that the New York Times published this piece, do you think President Trump is to blame?
No, I definitely don't think Donald Trump is to blame. I'm not someone that goes to California often. I've only been there twice now, maybe 3 times. But one of them just so happened to be a few weeks ago. So I got to taste California firsthand pretty well. And the first thing I want to point out is the fact that I had to pay $8 for a Kit Kat. How can you survive in an economy where you have to pay $8 for a snack? Now, granted, it was in a more prestigious part of California, but I still don't think that makes it any different, the fact that you're paying so much. But that's everywhere in California. Gas prices are $5 a gallon. I just do not see, when you are paying $1 million for less than 1,000 square foot house and you're paying $5 for a gallon of gas and $8 for a snack, how you can live in the state of California. It is naturally beautiful, but the leaders that are leading it are killing it.
Well, I'll tell you why, Bo. It's because of President Trump. That is why it's so awful. And if you don't believe me, Harrison, let me read you some quotes from this article. They're talking about California being at its most vulnerable and desperate time, seeking federal assistance, but it seems unlikely can look to Washington for help. It also says Governor Newsom boasted about this last year's new tourism numbers, but said that all of those numbers may go away because of the Trump tariffs and restrictive immigration policies. Again, digging themselves into a hole and then saying, well, the federal government led by Donald Trump isn't helping us out of the hole. Therefore, he's the problem. Is that how you see it?
I'm bullish on California. I'm actually very bullish on California. It is getting redder. The people are waking up. I think you're going to see potentially California really turn into, maybe it's flippable, I think, for sure. If they get all the illegals out of California, I mean, that would be unbelievable. They would definitely, I think you'd probably go red for real. But outside of that, this is total progressive collapse of California being blamed on Donald Trump is such a dying gasp from mainstream media. Like, that is one of the most ridiculous things I've ever read. And the whole thing is blamed on Trump for the literal everything that anybody who's like even sort of right of center has said has been happening in California for the past 15, 20 years. So it's insane to me.
Yeah, the state has been run by the left effectively in both of the chambers of the state legislation and every single statewide elected political office for the last 40 years. And again, they're in this hole, and this article makes it clear, well, the only reason they can't get out of the hole is because there's a lack of help from Washington. Also, Harrison, to your point of California getting a little bit more and more red every single election cycle, yeah, Republicans haven't won it in a very long time, but Donald Trump picked up 10 different counties throughout the state that Joe Biden had won in 2020. He picked those up in the 2024 election, which, again, I'm slowly seeing a shift away from the insanity. You know where I'm not seeing a shift away from the insanity is inside the DNC. There's drama inside the Democratic National Committee, and I know we all hate to see that. That's the last thing we want to see is drama and turmoil inside the DNC. But the DNC, one of the committees there, the Credentials Committee inside the Democratic National Committee, voted yesterday to void the internal elections, which would effectively void David Hogg's seat as the vice president. Now, if you're not familiar with this story, to catch you up really, really quick, David Hogg is a very, very progressive individual. He's a 25-year-old who wants to primary Democrats in Democrat-held seats, which is a crazy thing to do if those seats are strongly held and you're going to effectively get a further left person in there that possibly could lose to a Republican. Again, we all hate to see that. We hate to see bad decisions being made. But Bo, is this kind of the old, getting back to the old smoke-filled rooms? The Democrats are going to pick who they're going to pick at the very elite levels, and the whole thing about democracy that they've been clamoring about for the last several cycles is not actually what they believe internally?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sadly, it is the elites that decide everything within the Democratic Party. And not to give any credit to David Hogg, because there's not much credit to give him. But if there is any credit at all, I would say there is reform that needs to be had in the Democratic Party. And he's someone willing to do that, and they have to stop him. So, yeah, seeing stuff like that, you can also refer to the Unf America tour, where there was a lot of turmoil there, couldn't even make it past one tour stop, trying to mess with Turning Point USA before they started to internally crash on one another for racism. So you see it 24/7, the reason that they're not gaining any new voters, the reason they're getting no more hype than they are right now is because they can't get past the insider fighting to even talk to the masses because they're just fighting all the time.
But I don't want to bury the lead here, but for our viewers at home that don't know what the Unf America tour is, it was a tour that was following around the Turning Point tour. It was only one stop, which is, sad. But, I would watch out for that. They almost had 11 people at their rally, and that is a force to be reckoned with. Now, we had 3,000, but again, it's a numbers thing, and
No.
Almost 11 is getting up there. Harrison, the new election now is going to be had, so they're going to redo effectively the elections they had earlier in the year. Do you think there's going to be any change? And by change, I mean, I don't know. Do you think some people may not make it to the vote, to put it lightly?
Okay. Big day in the stock market today. So I am bullish again. I'm bullish on David Hogg because
Hmm.
here's my theory. Everything that he's experiencing now is just very indicative, and this is just everything that goes on the left. This weird infighting. It's full blown leftism now, right? So like these are people having struggle sessions all the time, and I think what he is seeing is an opportunity, or maybe what he will see if he's smart. And I don't know if he is smart or not, but I know he has. This was almost like his whole persona was contrived. Like he wasn't there the day the shooting happened. There's a lot of weird stuff, but all that being said, you might be a deep state. All that being said, if he starts moving to the right a little bit on these things, starts going on some podcasts and like realizing that the left hates him, the Democratic Party throws him out, gets some other guy. You know, they'll find some young black kid to do it. Maybe, you know, some young black girl, something like that. They can't do a white guy. So yeah, I think if they cast him out hardcore enough, the whole prodigal son thing, people will love to talk to him. He'll be able to get a lot of press, and then he can be one of these like converted, you know, Joe Rogan-esque type sort of people.
Interesting. Interesting. So
Yeah.
you're saying that he is experiencing what so many libs have experienced in the past. Hey, they've got like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders probably should have gotten the nomination. Again, I'm not talking about like his ideas are good or anything, but he got the rug pulled out from under him several times. And you're thinking, hey, if this happens to David Hogg, maybe he starts to get a little bit frustrated and comes around to the right side of the aisle.
To be fair, some of this started with him doing something sketchy, right? Wasn't he being like a grifter and he put his number in a DNC fundraising email or something like that? Something really weird. So if he's just a general grifter, then that's even better chance that he'll find some way to pivot to the right, honestly.
Interesting.
But if there's no path for him because the establishment, the smoky room cigar smokers are too protective, right, for whatever they need, he's gonna get paid somewhere.
That's
And I
going to
don't
be
think
really interesting. Yeah, really
Yeah.
interesting to see. Again, not really trying to throw any accusations against him that I don't have full knowledge of. All of this
Well,
is
I'm just saying.
alleged. But it is interesting to see the infighting. And, you know, yeah, maybe you're right. Bullish on David Hogg getting the Bernie Sanders treatment and finally going, yeah, enough of these morons. I'm going to go where
Joe Bob, the gun tours where he's just doing the anti-gun thing, those do not pay enough. So he's gonna have to find something else to do.
yeah.
His lifestyle's already like think about where he was 10 years ago or whenever this went down. This kid's making a lot of money. He's making like millions of dollars doing all this sort of stuff. The spigot's gonna run out. He's got a nice lifestyle. I think he's going to Harvard or he graduated Harvard, something like that. So he's gonna have to do something. And there's plenty of funny money for converts on the right for sure. They love.
We'll see what happens there. Again, hate to see inner turmoil in the DNC. Harrison and Bo will be back after the break to discuss, well, the View co-host that was not a big fan of the new pope has changed her tune for a clearly racist reason. Also, these South African refugees, it's funny, the people that were so pro-refugee all of a sudden are very upset. Is it deserved? We'll have a video that I think pretty well defines whether or not those refugee status was reserved for those South Africans. All that more coming up after the break. Don't go away. We'll be right back.